By with the analysis, Yossi Mekelberg, Associate Fellow for the Middle East North Africa Programme at Chatham House. Yossi, thank you for being with us here on France 24. Arrest warrants then, what's your take on this development in the story?
Good evening, thank you for having me. I think it's serious. This court case will never take place because Israel is not a signatory to the Rome Statute, is obviously not Hamas. And as long as Netanyahu and Gallant are not traveling to any of the countries that are signatory, they won't be arrested. But I think it sends a very clear message that while even if a country has the right, there is a casus belli, and has the right to defend itself and go to war, as was the case on 7th of October after the atrocity of Hamas, it doesn't mean that it can use any means in its arsenal, in its possession, and committing war crimes in response to war crimes is unacceptable by the international community. So starvation and other means won't be accepted. So I think the message in Israel, one understands the outrage, and you more than understand even expect it, but at the same time, it's also a moment that should be some sausage within Israel.
There should be some kind of reflection, is that what you're saying? Do you think this should make Israel actually reflect on what is happening, what they continue to do?
Completely, and go back to when even President Biden warned Israel on the second or third day of the war, look, what happened to you was terrible and it was horrific. And hence also why the general prosecutor also called for arrest warrants for the leaders of Hamas. There is no doubt about it. But at the same time, as President Biden said, learn from our mistake 9/11, not go to avenge and revenge. And the other thing, a liberal democracy can't fight, can't go to war the way that a terrorist group is going. And Israel didn't listen to that. And it doesn't achieve its objective militarily, not politically, and worse than that, it faces itself on one hand in front of the ICC with accusation of genocide, and here for war crimes and crimes against humanity. That's what the Netanyahu government led Israel to. And one of the reasons for this, because he went into government with a far-right government, and by every time that they comment about the war, they exactly justify this kind of accusation because they express the intention of committing this kind of crimes.
And this is the problem. The crux of the matter is that this coalition that Netanyahu is leading, the thirst from him to get back into power after any number of kind of failed elections in Israel, finally hatches a coalition which is the most far right that Israel has ever seen. And here we have a situation where it is backing the continuation of this, it's more or less a one-way bombardment of the Gaza Strip. 1,200 Israelis were killed by Hamas on October the 7th, at least, and that was an atrocity completely. 35,000 plus Palestinians have been killed in the wake of all that. Israel, in the process of all of this, Yossi, has really given up the high ground, hasn't it? Because there's no way you can have the moral high ground with that kind of equation.
Yeah, it had the moral high ground at the beginning of the war, on October 7th. There is no doubt about it. The atrocity of the Hamas was horrific, and actually the way that they treat the hostages and cynically using the hostages deserves any condemnation, and hence again they face arrest warrants as well. But at the same time, it should not have led Israel to conduct the war that it's the way it conducted, which you have tens of thousands, many of them are innocent people, children and women and elderly, paying the price for this war. The idea of starvation, that Gaza is devastated, and by some accounts it will take 20 or 30 years to rebuild it, let alone it radicalize, the population of Gaza and way beyond. And that's the difference. And Israel could have taken a completely different approach for day one. War against Hamas, yes, looking for its leaders that were the perpetrators of the atrocity of October 7. I think the world was behind Israel, but not the way that it went with full force and basically treating the entire Gaza Strip as collateral damage.
Hamas, of course, has nothing to do with the ICC. Israel's not a signatory, neither is the United States. Joe Biden has spoken out to express his outrage that Netanyahu has been named as a possible subject of the arrest warrant. Is the ICC also sending a message to the United States here that it really needs to up its game in how it deals with Israel?
I think the most important thing, is to send a message that war crimes, wherever they are, won't be tolerated. And I think they change the international discourse. You know, Israel is not the only one. There are not Hamas. There are war crimes taking place in so many different places. And I think it is, in a way, within this terrible situation, opportunity to send a very clear message that there will be a universal approach to war crimes. They won't be tolerated. And whoever is committing war crimes or crimes against humanity, they will be eventually prosecuted by the ICC. Again, in certain cases, because of the weakness of the international community, if you're not a signatory, it's impossible, but at least it sends the message. And it's also sent the message they won't be able to travel certain places and also be ostracized in the international community if they won't adhere to certain standards of behavior, including at times of war.
Yossi, thank you so much for joining us. Yossi Mekelberg, Associate Fellow in the Middle East and North Africa Programme at Chatham House. Thank you, sir, as always. Yossi Mekelberg, our guest there. So, Netanyahu and Yoav